Hello, welcome to the Skate Podcast. I'm Brandon.
I'm Josh.
And I'm David.
Hey, Dave. It's been a while since you've been on the podcast.
Yes, it has been.
I think last time you were on it, you were here to talk about a time travel movie.
What, really? That sounds...
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Yeah, I guess that sounds accurate. Yeah, it sounds right. Cool.
And before that was
This
a Star
time
Trek movie, so let's combine this.
Now we're just gonna, combine the two.
Yes, so I seem to have a thing for time travel and
Yeah, I
things
guess
in
so.
space.
Yeah. So if anybody that's listening doesn't know who Dave is, he was on the podcast at the beginning, then took a break to do school stuff. He does the music for the show. The theme song.
Yes,
He created the theme song and the theme for our Monster Month too, right?
Yes.
Well, he named the podcast too.
It's
He
true.
named it Dave Jr.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. So
All right.
what are we talking about today, Dave?
We are talking about Star Trek IV, Save the Whales. Like most people call it, Save the Whales.
Yeah, I remember you always saying something about that.
So today is Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home from 1986. Josh, what's it about?
Okay, a brief plot summary for you is to save the Earth from an alien probe, Kirk and crew must travel back in time to retrieve the only beings who can communicate with it.
Wow, that was pretty concise.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we're on episode 54, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home from 1986. It was written by Harve Bennett and Leonard Nimoy. It was directed by Leonard Nimoy. This is Nimoy's second of 6 films he would direct. It was made on a budget of $21 million, and the box office was $133 million, making it the second highest original cast movie behind the motion picture. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 85% by the critics and 81% by the audience.
Dave, you were looking up the trivia for the episode?
Yes. I have some interesting bits of trivia here for all parties interested in hearing such information. Kirk Thatcher, an associate producer of the film, played the punk on the bus and also wrote the song I Hate You, which the punk is listening to on his boombox.
That's funny because when they played that song, I was thinking to myself, there's no way that's a real song right now.
No, yeah, I always wondered about that myself as a kid.
Gotcha.
As far as the legitimacy of that song. When Spock is taking the tests at the beginning, watch the questions he is given. In slow motion, you can see that some of them are questions about the original series.
Can you give me an example of that?
No, I cannot.
Okay, just wondering.
The aircraft carrier that Uhura and Chekhov find is actually the USS Ranger, standing in for the USS Enterprise.
Okay.
The Enterprise was at sea during filming. Here's something that totally blew my mind. Eddie Murphy was originally planned to take the role of the 20th century human who assists the Enterprise in getting the whales.
They said that, I think because it was Beverly Hills Cop, or was it The Golden Child that had been a hit for them, they wanted to get Eddie Murphy in this, and I guess Eddie Murphy had said he was a Star Trek fan. I'm trying to remember what the issue was, but yeah.
Now, who was he going to play? One of the whales?
Yes. No, he was going to take place of guest star Catherine Hicks, Dr. Jillian Taylor.
That's fine.
Okay.
Now I'm picturing Eddie Murphy in a whale costume in a pool.
Probably
or
sounded
something.
like a donkey.
I want some waffles.
All right, what else you got for us, Dave?
Let's see. Okay, so the scene in which Chekhov and Uhura beam onto the Enterprise aircraft carrier was originally slightly different. It was scripted that they would sneak onto the ship undetected, but the American Navy believed that it would be impossible for 2 intruders to get past a military security force. So, it was rewritten that the transporter had enough energy to beam the pair onto the carrier, but not to get them back off.
So basically, the American military thought it would be an insult that
Exactly.
somebody could get on their ship.
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
That's funny.
McCoy's statement, quote, Spock, you really have gone where no man has gone before, unquote, is the first time that the TV show's title catchphrase was used in universe. Since this movie, other productions, such as Star Trek V and Star Trek Enterprise, have established the phrase as Starfleet's motto.
And I think this was the first one to say not exactly right, but he says, "Scotty, beam me up," which is the closest he's ever said to that line.
That I'm not sure, but that sounds accurate.
Because I know that's like a common belief that was a thing he said, but he actually never said it in the series, from what I understand.
You're right, yeah. Okay, I got one more. On the original VHS and Paramount widescreen DVD releases, the synopsis on the covers says this, quote, "A thrilling action-packed mission for the Starship Enterprise," unquote. As anyone who knows their Star Trek, this was the one movie that didn't feature the Enterprise in any capacity except as a flashback at the start and as a brief reprisal at the end. The Klingon Bird of Prey was the ship they had the adventure in. So
right. Yeah, I have points of trivia I could add to that. This is the first appearance of Admiral Cartwright, who would later come back for Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
The actor who plays Admiral Cartwright also plays Captain Sisko's father on Deep Space Nine.
Originally, there was going to be a plot that you find out Saavik was pregnant by Spock. Hence why she stays behind on Vulcan, and also why she looks so uncomfortable around him.
Wow.
When she comes on to like see them off and she tells Kirk about like, your son died bravely, and then Spock comes aboard, she kind of has this look at him like uncomfortable. And if you also look back at the previous movie, Star Trek 3, they said that Leonard Nimoy, when he's going down the line to each individual person, kind of looking at them, when he gets to her, he told her to kind of like look at me and then look down like you're almost like ashamed because she's supposed to be pregnant by him. Obviously, they never...
Did they ever go anywhere with that?
They never did any more with it. Maybe in the books, but nothing with the movies.
At what point would she have become pregnant by Spock?
In Star Trek 3 on the Genesis planet when he was going through Pon Farr.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah. Which is also weird because I guess it was another abandoned plot thread when Saavik was still being played by Kirstie Alley in Star Trek 2. There was talk of maybe a little romance between David. So essentially she would have been cheating had they explored that.
And then there would have been some animosity. Okay, wow.
And this movie was dedicated to the crew of the Challenger, which broke up 73 seconds after takeoff on January 28th of 1986.
Yeah, the Challenger broke up earlier that year. So this movie came out in November, and they dedicated it to the Challenger disaster.
Yeah.
This, in a way, this is actually kind of like an offbeat Christmas movie for us.
Well, that's funny you say that because to me, the music sounds like you're watching the Star Trek Christmas special.
Josh, you literally just took away one of my notes. I have a note written down here that says the music of this movie sounds like Christmas music.
I remember the first time we watched it at your house, and I remember I was like, "What is this?" This has to be my least favorite of the Star Trek music scores.
Yeah, it's awful.
So wait, you said Star Trek Christmas special?
Yeah.
There was a Star Trek Christmas special?
I was joking because the Star Wars Christmas special.
I was going to say it couldn't have been worse than that. The movie kind of picks up right where 3 left off. In a way, like 2, 3, and 4 seem to be a trilogy.
Yes and no. I definitely think 2 and 3 are definitely continue tightly with each other. I mean, the Genesis thing is the whole plot of 3, just like it was 2. This one, it just takes place after. Some things kind of connect to the previous 2 movies, but like not the way 2 and 3 did.
The only part about this,
I would agree it's less of a connection, but it does conclude, especially at the end.
Sure.
This when they like demote Captain Kirk or demote Admiral Kirk down to captain for the events of the previous movie and then all that stuff. But
the only side story in this one really is Spock kind of becoming Spock again, which ties in with the second or the third movie. So the movie starts off with the Klingons being kind of ticked off that Kirk stole a Klingon ship.
And boy, do they got some good security footage, let me tell you.
yeah, they got it straight from Paramount.
Well, just like their security footage of Spock in engineering.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, this one's almost worse. Not only does it have like the close-ups of them from the Enterprise crew, which I could almost accept that maybe there's security cameras on the bridge, but if the ship was destroyed, I don't see how that security footage kind of could have got off. And then there's also a perfect...
It's all in the cloud, It's all...
I guess so. But the only reason, even if even if we were going to debate that, I don't think they would, because it's a military vessel, and I don't think they would want any of their security footage to be able to be hacked remotely.
That's a good point.
Also, there's great footage of the Enterprise itself being blown up. So I don't know. Did they have a space station out there that has amazing lenses on it?
Perhaps.
I remember once watching a documentary about where some of these real life missile complexes, they've never upgraded the technology to be able to interface with like cloud-based things or to be able to access it remotely, because they would never want the missile to be able to be hacked into and launched from somewhere else. You have to be there in person to push the button.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I assume the Enterprise wouldn't have that kind of feature if it was security cameras.
Right.
That Klingon being all ticked off was the only time we see one in the movie. Throughout the movies and even on the TV series, I guess now, Klingons tend to change their look from time to time. Any thoughts about the looks of this Klingon?
They're starting to look a little more like they did in the Next Generation.
Well, that makes sense, considering this is right before TNG premiered.
That could be, because, like, yeah, if you look at the Klingons in the motion picture, obviously they look very different from the original series versions, but they also don't even look like that when we see them again in Part 3.
Right.
And yeah, this one in 4, the ridges are a lot more like pronounced than even in Part 3. I actually like this version better than Part 3's look.
It looks like, I can tell it's a Klingon right away, but it also seems like the head is a little more round to me, like round features instead of the jagged. Like we're used to Worf with like the pointy head ridges and all that.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, I was watching another thing one time on Star Trek, and they said they based the Klingon foreheads on dinosaur bones. And they were saying how they also like to make them all look a little different, so that they don't all just look like one mold you put on everybody's head. And I like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like everybody has different facial features.
Sure.
Why not?
Yeah. Right.
All right. And then the movie it doesn't really waste any time. Like, it starts off with a lot of flashbacks, but as soon as that's over, it doesn't really waste too much time getting the plot going here. And we see this probe. Dave, how would you describe the probe?
A long cylindrical object floating through space with an apparatus at the end of it, which has a orb that comes out of it. I mean, I don't know what to make. I've never really known what to make of this thing. It's really bizarre. Honestly, even at the end of this movie, you're still kind of wondering what the heck just what the heck just happened. What was the purpose of this probe coming to Earth in the first place?
Yeah, they never explain where it came from, what it wanted besides talking to whales. I don't even understand why. Okay, you want to talk to whales, fine, but why do you have to vaporize the oceans and cut off the power? I mean, maybe some of that was accidental, like the power for spaceships.
Yeah, I get the impression that it wasn't hostile. It was kind of accidentally causing.
But okay, if you want to talk to creatures that are in water, why are you vaporizing water?
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, okay.
And then,
so
yeah,
I
in
always
the end,
took
we find out nothing.
I always took the water thing, like all the bad effects that this thing had on Earth, I always took that as unintentional. Like it was just like some kind of, I don't know, side effect of its proximity to Earth. That's what I always took it to be.
It might not have known that the creatures were in water, or that it would have that effect on water. Like how would this thing even get
have that effect on water? But they said it was directing its calls to the water.
Oh, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know what kind of information this thing would have had on Earth's whales and how it would have the language or how it would even get that information.
Well, basically, Spock theorized that possibly they came back, or this things came to Earth back in the day, communicated with whales. Fine, okay, great. And then it went, and wanted to reconnect with them. So, because he says that it's directing its signal at the water, he has her adjust the signal to how it would sound like underwater.
It's a very weird plot, and I guess it's better that they didn't even try to explain it, because it doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
There's so many aspects of this movie that don't make sense. It's my second least favorite Star Trek movie, up against the motion picture.
Does it seem like they copied off the motion picture by this large probe?
Maybe, sorta.
That comes to Earth to connect with somebody, to talk to somebody. I felt that was a little too much, like to repeat something like that. myself.
You could write a book on all the different things that don't make sense in this movie. It's just so many. It's such a long list. And yeah, I've always thought there's like too much of a parallel between the plot of this movie and the plot of the motion picture.
Right.
And maybe
well, I mean,
why
just in
hate
that
them
little
both
bit.
so
I mean,
much.
obviously they're very different movies other than that, but just the idea of something from somewhere. I mean, we find out more about Voyager in that movie, but we know absolutely nothing about this one.
Yeah.
Was that you, Dave?
What?
Was that you?
What?
Yawning?
No.
Was that you, Brango?
No.
Who just yawned?
I didn't hear anything.
Are you joking?
No.
Okay. All right. Continue. Sorry.
Okay. Anyway, what were we saying?
Just that basically we felt like it was kind of copying just the idea of a probe from someplace else.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just the basic idea of this big thing coming from some unknown origin to Earth, and it's the antagonist, and that's just
City on the Edge of Forever a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps was it Tomorrow Was Yesterday? Possibly a little bit too.
Well, yeah. I mean, they did the slingshot time travel effect thing in the original series. I think they did that like more than once in the original series, and then they
which
did it again
almost
for this
begs
movie.
the question of if you can. I mean, I know they made it out like, okay, yeah, there is some thinking you have to put into it, some equations. Wouldn't you think more people would be doing it? Like, why not send some, Klingons can do it. Why couldn't they go back and destroy the Federation before it got its start or something, like.
Well, it's funny is there's actually a couple of missions in the Star Trek Online video game where you have to travel back in time by means of slingshotting yourself around the sun like they do in this movie and like they did in the original series. And it always got me thinking about how funny it would be. Well, not funny, but it'd be interesting if this was to become something that people tried to do in the Star Trek universe more than once. You'd constantly see these obituaries in the newspaper for people who died trying to time travel around the sun, and they just flew into the sun.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Well, first they're trying to figure out how to operate the Klingon Wessel, and then they just immediately, and then they jump to the conclusion in order to save the day, they have to time travel. Like it's just something they could do all the time. Right. And it wasn't even like theoretically we could go back and pick up. They pieced everything together immediately and then said, "All right, well, that's just time travel," without really going into anything. They just do it like they can do it.
Yeah, that doesn't pass the smell test.
I also think it's odd that if Klingons are their main enemies, shouldn't Uhura have some handle on Klingon? Like, shouldn't you know the language of your enemy? You think she should be able, at least her, she should be able to do something with that.
Well, I mean, that would make sense. Doesn't she know Klingon a little bit?
No, in Star Trek 6, that's even a pointed out that she has to read a book to try to do Klingon, and she does terrible at it.
Yeah, I remember now.
But anyway.
What I want to know is why the Klingon ships are packed full of information on humpback whales.
Okay, I'll give you that. I actually wrote that down first myself, but then as I watched it just today, they say that they updated the computers.
Accessed it.
Excuse me?
Yeah, they it wasn't originally like that.
No.
They accessed it.
Well, they say before they take off from Vulcan that they updated the Klingon, the Federation databanks into the bird of prey.
Yes.
Okay.
So
that makes
I did wonder
sense.
that myself.
Something else I always wondered about this particular bird of prey is how come in Star Trek 3 it looked so different on the bridge, and then in the beginning of Star Trek 4 when they're getting ready to take off from Vulcan, and suddenly it's like it looks completely different. Remember how in Part 3 the captain's chair was like
raised
high
up
above, but now it's like you get in the bridge on this supposed to be the same ship,
right? Well, the
and
real world reason
different
is that they destroyed the sets every time. Even the small bit of the Enterprise bridge that we see at the ending of this movie looks different from what you see it look like in Star Trek 5 because they destroyed the set every time.
that doesn't answer the question.
So they didn't,
though, because they
but they didn't
built it the same way to make it look like
they could have.
ship.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't, but what I'm getting at is they didn't do it for Star Trek V with the Enterprise bridge from the little bit you see of it in Star Trek 4.
Well, that I mean, I'm talking about in-universe explanations. Okay.
No, yeah, I'm saying there isn't one.
Yeah.
But
So-
I'm just saying that's the real world answer. Well, another problem they have with this movie is the ship changes sizes. If you look at it when it's landed on Vulcan, it only looks to be, a certain size, but then when you see it up against that whaling boat, it's much larger. So it actually changed size.
I never really got that.
Was that your observation?
Excuse me?
Was that your observation? Or
Yeah,
did you read
it's way bigger than what it looked like when
what
it was
were you
landed.
comparing it to on Vulcan though? Like what you're getting is
Them standing next to it, and then you can see the guys on the boat when they fire the harpoon cable, so you can see it's way bigger.
I didn't notice that.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
not a common thing though. Like I know with King Kong, didn't they have
Right. Yep. I was
size
going to
models?
say that.
Interesting. Yeah, and then you have of course, you have the Klingon ship in the water, and then all the people are in the water with it, swimming and hanging onto it, and you can see how the hull looks compared to all the people who are right up against it in the water.
I've heard some people say that they think the beginning and the end, when they're in the 23rd century, is or 24th century, 23rd century, right?
23rd.
I've heard some people say they think that's the more that's the worst part of this movie, and they think once they get to 86, that's where it gets good. I kind of actually feel differently. I actually am more interested in what was happening in the modern day of I don't know,
In the 23rd century.
Yeah, I actually found that better personally. That was always my favorite part.
You wanted to know more about the Federation president played by Sean Connery?
Haha, no.
What?
the guy that plays the Federation president in this movie looks a lot like Sean Connery, like a modern Sean Connery.
Yeah.
I didn't see
actually
that.
looked up the actor to see who he was, and turns out he was also in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation in 1987.
Interesting.
The name of the episode is Haven, and I don't really remember this one, but it's about Deanna Troi being having a prearranged marriage.
That sounds familiar.
I don't remember.
Is that the one with Quark in it? But he's not Quark. He's that treasure chest.
Let me look
Oh
at the cast.
yeah.
Okay, so what I found funny is they're seeing this captain's log from this other captain, and he's looking away from the camera, so you're seeing the side of his face while he talks, and I don't know what that's all about. I don't know if he had to read his lines, so he needed to look at off camera.
I always wondered that.
I
just looked that up. Josh Armin Shimmerman is gift box face, uncredited.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway, I always thought that was kind of strange that he's never looking at now. I would think at one point he could look at the camera, but he never does.
Gift box face.
All right, so they head back in time, which is weird, and then we're treated all sorts of weird special effects, and I noted it, and then when I was looking stuff up about this movie, I noticed Industrial Light and Magic did the special effects. Mm-hmm. So was that some early CGI, like their faces that were forming in whatever?
The morphine?
Yeah.
I mean, I know morphine was getting big, especially with what was that was it Tom Cruise? No, not Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer. Was it Legend? I think used a lot of morphine. Kroll used some morphine. Morphine was just kind of big back then.
Well, this is more than just morphing. It wasn't one thing really turning into another. It was like their faces, but
one face turned into the next guy's face.
Yeah, okay. So morphing.
Well, to speak on that scene, I actually liked all of that until they got to the point of, I like the build up, stuff shaking, and then pipes are bursting and steam's coming out, and they're this seems like a very dangerous thing. So, which kind of helps because again, I was thinking if time travel is possible with the proper equations, why aren't more governments doing it to take out their enemy when they're weak? But they make it out like it is kind of a tough thing and it's taking a toll on the ship. But then, okay, so then you have the blackout, or I should say a whiteout scene. You have the morphine. And then, but the only part about it I didn't like was when they show I guess it's a whale and they show a doll, a humanoid doll fall into water. That was the part where I was I almost felt they should have not done that. It seemed weird to me.
Okay, I just gotta say, I've always had a problem with that whole sequence. I'd never understood it. The floating 3D heads morphing into each other, the fog shape at the end of and you got like the cattails sticking out of like the lake or whatever that was. It just none of it makes sense to me. Like I'm on board with the whole time travel thing up until that. I mean, it's like an acid trip or something. Seems like you're on bad acid watching that scene unfold.
I was watching this with Christy, and we both made a joke about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That scene where they're going through the tunnel.
It's been a while since I've seen it. I didn't get that connection myself,
but I understood that reference.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of when Gene Wilder is going all crazy when they're on that boat ride.
Okay, yeah. Like, I know it wouldn't have worked for the story, but I almost kind of just wish somebody, when they said time travel, it would have been cool if somebody would have mentioned the Guardian, just for like a reference, you know.
That would have been cool. That would have been cool.
You know, I know you would have to been able to carry them back, but so that wouldn't have worked. But it just would have been kind of cool if someone would have mentioned it.
We have to go back to 1987. There's something wrong with your whales.
You know, and just for continuity, maybe they should have done the same thing in First Contact when the crew went back in time to chase down the Borg, and when they went back in time, maybe we should have seen like all the people of the Next Generation crew, like their heads floating around and morphing into each other, and cattails and weirdness and what have you, and I don't know.
The other thing I like about that is you're hearing lines that haven't been spoken yet. As one head morphs into the other, you actually hear each person say something that they are going to eventually say. Like it's a foreshadow thing. That was cool. Again, the ship like getting all like shaken and getting tore up, like that was cool. I just didn't like once they show like the doll and the you know the marsh and the water and all that part I didn't like, but I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I was always just more confused by it than anything else. Even when I first saw it, I was like, "What am I looking at?"
Yeah,
I never understood what was the purpose of having those lines that you hadn't heard yet until later in the movie. I mean, I get it; it's a plot device. I get it. It foreshadows the end of the movie, but why is it relevant to time travel? I don't get it. So
I don't know. I thought it was actually kind of cool, but I know it doesn't really make any sense, but it was cool to me.
Yeah.
So they get to the other side, and as soon as they get there, Uhura's like, "I'm picking up whale songs." So she was receiving a whale hail.
I'm assuming she was looking for it. Maybe she just
but I thought it was really funny. Like the first thing, "I'm picking up whale song." Like they were tuned into it automatically.
She should have said "whaling frequencies open."
There you go.
So they land the ship, and what's funny is you see the trash can get flattened, but the grass itself does not. And I thought that was kind of fun.
They put the imprints in the ground.
The imprint, yes, but the actual grass.
The grass is just sticking up.
Yeah, like if you took a aquarium and like laid it into the grass, that grass you would see look flattened. They didn't. So you see the imprint of the foot of the ship, but you don't actually see the grass look flattened. I understand that was probably a really hard thing to do, but yeah, that's just a little nitpick. But I felt like they should have scanned outside to know that there was other people around before they just opened the door and all. Yeah,
there were those two trash men, and I wanted so bad for them to be Dick Miller and Robert Picardo.
Oh, that would have been hilarious.
Yes,
that would have been so awesome. Oh my gosh,
I'm gonna imagine it that way in my head from now on. The two trash men from Burbs were the same guys that were in this.
Let's get out of here.
And not only that, Robert Picardo goes on.
I pick up trash from the cans, not from the street.
Yeah. So there's a part where they're all walking away. And I half expected to see Scotty like take his hand like over his shoulder while he walked and like click it, and then like you see the door shut and you hear like a chirp chirp, like it locked or something. I thought that would have been great. But I know keyless entry probably wasn't as big of a thing at that time.
That's funny. That would have been funny.
Yeah.
So I have a question real quick. Were Sulu and Chekhov on different seats when they were on the Klingon ship, or were those normally where they sit?
Let's see. I think Sulu should be on the left, and Chekhov should be on the right.
So they were opposite.
From Kirk.
What in the Klingon ship, they're normally like one way, but they were opposite for the Klingon ship.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
I mean, I could just chalk that up to the way, in England, the steering wheel is on the right side of the car. Over here, it's on the left-hand side. So, I mean, it's probably just an accident, but that's what I'll just excuse it away with.
So this movie is more lighthearted than a lot of the other Star Trek movies. Not that they're all hardcore or anything, but like a lot of them are a bunch of like techno babble and basically conflict. In this one, there's not really a villain. It's just that probe is threatening Earth unintentionally, maybe, and all the drama comes from them just trying to track down whales and get whales back.
Yeah, it's like the Klingon in the beginning is like accusing them, so he's like the villain for like half a second.
And then they skip that. Are they saving that for the next movie?
Yeah, they skip it. Not really. I don't think we see him. Or do they just kind of
drop it? Okay.
We see him again in Star Trek 6, I believe, that particular Klingon.
Okay. Which Klingon?
The one that was accusing them and showing the Star Trek 3 tape.
I was going to say, that particular Klingon, the actor's name is John Schuck, and he actually played a Klingon on Enterprise as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some other roles on Deep Space Nine and Voyager, but they were non-Klingons.
Okay.
And so we're treated all sorts of comedic moments, and this is kind of like the Voyager episode where they go back to the 1990s. They even repeat some of the same jokes. Computer talking into the mouse.
Yes.
So the first thing that I wrote down is that kind of made me chuckle was Scotty when Kirk said we have to go back and get some humpbacks. And he says humpbacked people? What are you talking about?
Humpback people.
There's lots of silly moments in this.
Yeah, you said something about the computers. Why are not to backtrack, but why are the computers, when Spock's doing his little quiz, why are they speaking so quickly? He's not answering faster. He's not answering more than one at a time. So, like, what was really the point of them speaking so fast when he's still answering normally and one at a time? Like, it just seemed... Illogical? What was the point? Yeah, illogical, yeah.
That's a good point.
And here's another thing I want to know. Does anyone cross a bridge in the 23rd century?
Well, in the 23rd century, as far as I'm aware, everyone's supposed to have, like, hover cars.
Right. So the bridges that exist, such as Golden Gate Bridge, no one probably really crosses it. Maybe people that might walk for recreation.
Who knows? Maybe the hover cars do well if there's, like, surface, like, 2 feet beneath them.
Are they hover cars, or are they just shuttlecrafts?
Well, I think they're hover cars, because even in, like, the Next Generation series finale, they showed what looked to be like a city area, and they showed these like flying cars.
Oh, really?
In going around town.
I imagine they have regular vehicles as well as hovering ones.
It's true. They probably do have both.
In what is it? Nemesis? Don't they have the dune buggy that they're driving around in?
They do.
Like the war dune buggy.
Yeah.
So they still
Argo.
have.
That's the
another
Argo.
thing I thought was funny was in the beginning they show like they're putting this like wedge thing on the window of the Starfleet headquarters while the storm was big, and I'm thinking like, one, what is the point of that? Because if the glass breaks, what is that wedge going to do? Which it does later break. And two, shouldn't it be transparent aluminum?
Yeah, or wouldn't they have force fields?
Yeah, exactly. Force fields, transparent aluminum, and again, it just doesn't make sense. It's
like, and if they were
wedging
worried
that thing
about
is
the
not
window
going to
breaking,
yeah.
Why did they only do one panel, not the other two?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It's weird.
Interesting.
So here's something: money. Does it or does it not exist in the 23rd and 4th century? You hear some movies and TV shows reference money in the future. Some don't.
Okay, so
didn't Picard say they did away with monetary?
Yeah, he did, but then Quark is all about it. Gold press platinum.
Okay, well,
Quark is from a different planet.
Here's the answer. They did away with money on Earth.
But I thought there was other episodes and movies that do reference as if money is still used within the Federation.
Well, in the Federation, they
talk about Federation credits, don't they?
They talk about credits. They talk about gold press platinum, and they talk about other forms of like. Isn't Federation credits basically saying money?
I think if you're trying to do transactions with other species that still use.
Yeah, I think it's more money. Of a interplanetary galaxy form of currency.
Okay, all right,
but yeah.
So will Kirk get his glasses back?
Well, you talk about you bring up the glasses, and I was actually going to talk about those glasses because I
I
thought
say
it
he
was
won't.
well, I thought it was odd that Kirk even had those eyeglasses with him in the first place because the last time we saw them, Kirk was using them at the end of Star Trek Two,
And they were broke.
but also the Enterprise was destroyed. So why would he
Well, yeah,
have these glasses with him
well,
unless he?
most people I know keep their glasses on them.
Yeah, but not bifocals that you. I mean, as far as I know, I mean, I don't know. He was. It just.
Well, okay, like I
It
know
just doesn't
people
make
that
sense to
need
me that he would
readers
have those.
that like okay, Brandon wears glasses all the time, but I know people that they wear readers and they keep them in their pocket so when they have to read something they pull it out and they put it on. To me, and it was a gift from McCoy. I don't
Okay,
see
I mean, okay.
that out of the blue for him
It
to
does seem strange that he would have taken it to the Genesis planet, like because
he may just had it on him. He wasn't even thinking
Maybe,
about it.
yeah.
He just went. But okay, the question I have is, will he get those glasses back? I say no.
Get them back. What do you mean by that?
Spock says, "Are you sure you want to sell them? Weren't those a gift from Dr. McCoy?" And he says, "Yes, and I'll get them back." That's the beauty of it.
so to you that creates a paradox.
No. That's not what he said.
Okay, what do you say?
I thought the line was, "Weren't those a gift from Dr. McCoy?" And they will be again. That's the beauty of it.
But he won't, because
I always took that to mean they're going to be a gift again by getting us what we need in this particular situation.
okay, maybe, but I mean, because technically you have two pairs of the same glasses existing at the same time now, because those glasses are really somewhere else on Earth to eventually get to the future where McCoy purchased them or whatever, not purchases them, however he buys them and gives them to Kirk as a birthday gift. They exist twice. Yeah, he'll get them when the events of Star Trek 2 roll around again, but eventually he'll go back in time and trade them in. He'll never get them back, really.
Yeah, I never really thought about it that deeply. I always took that as to mean Kirk is, selling them, and then he's going to get money, and that's going to be how they become a gift again.
I took it as he was saying, and they'll become a gift again because I'm gonna get them back. Like that's the beauty of it. Anyway.
Okay, I never thought about it that way.
I thought it was funny when Spock's laying out this big grandmaster plan with the map about how to locate the whales, and then the bus pulls up, and Kirk's like, "Well, I think we'll find what we're looking for at the, whatever aquarium, at this place," and then the whole exact change.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny just to have Spock not.
It was
realize...
clever because they had the camera just hang on the bus, and you're like, "What are they waiting for? Why isn't it cutting?" That was a good joke. I like that.
There were a lot of little good jokes like that. Hello Computer, and was probably one of the. I remember laughing at that one the most when I first saw this movie.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And the nerve pinch on not too far after that is the nerve pinch on the guy with the really loud music.
Yeah.
And the whole bus tears.
Yeah. Did anyone else think that cop looked like one of the village people?
Yeah, that was another joke too.
Yeah.
You have Chekhov of all people going around asking about nuclear vessels during the Cold War.
Yeah. Did you know that the one woman that answers the question and says, "Oh, Sausalito or whatever," and he goes, "Yeah, I know that, but where is that?" She, I guess, this could have been trivia. I guess most of the people they had answering his questions were paid extras, but she, I guess, didn't see the camera, and so she just thought I guess he didn't realize she wasn't a paid extra, and he asked her, she answered, and then they had to like flag her down and get permission for her to, have her scene be used.
Interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I read.
I did notice. I think she was wearing a blue dress. Another woman in another scene where it seems like she's looking and walking straight at the camera, and like the focus almost seems to be on her, but should be, I think, on Spock and Kirk.
Yeah,
or doing something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Oh, there's a scene where there's a woman that's like coming straight at the camera, and it just looked very odd to me.
Nimoy just had his eye on her.
I thought it was really cool that we get to see Spock's mother again, played by Jane Wyatt again, and we haven't seen that since the original series.
No, that was cool. Yeah,
they brought her back for this. That was pretty cool.
We see Yeoman Rand again, technically.
Exactly that, and we see
Mark Leonard.
I was gonna say we also see Majel Barrett.
Yeah,
I was looking for her, but I never noticed her.
Yeah, you see her real quick. Playing. I'm assuming she's playing Nurse Chapel. I'm assuming.
I don't know. She was wasn't she doing no, that was Rand. Who was doing the transporting in motion picture when those two people got like deformed?
I don't know.
Wasn't that her?
I can't remember.
Okay, so here's my question. Okay, so you need whales to be brought back to your time to talk to this probe. Who's to say these whales know what to say to this probe, are going to have the right answer? You know, it'd be like saying, you know, some guy talked to my great 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 grandpa, and he comes and talks to, you know, me. I'm not going to have it, you know, just because I'm related to the guy doesn't, you know, or I'm the right species. Like, I don't necessarily going to have anything to say that's going to help out the situation.
Right.
Yeah, they just kind of jumped into the plot without really thinking about anything. And I think part of the movie, like, it was just supposed to be entertaining, so like they didn't go deep into anything. But as Star Trek fans, you're used to getting explanations.
Sure.
And, like, so it is weird. You do ask those questions, and you just have to ignore it because they never go into it.
Exactly. This as I said earlier, this movie has just got a list, a never-ending list of things that don't have explanation, don't make sense.
I was curious about humpback whales and being in captivity. I guess they have had humpback whales in captivity, and there's a whole thing about like whether you should have whales in captivity or not. Some people say it's unfair to the whale. Some people say, well, we need to have them in captivity so we can study them and help them reproduce their numbers and learn more about them.
At the very least, protect them from whalers, I would think.
Yeah,
and that was
obviously, captivity is not the best ideal for anything, but if it's going to protect the species, I guess that's
not as much of a topic nowadays. But in 1987, this was huge. Whaling was a big thing. Yeah. And in 1987, there was an act that was passed banning whaling, essentially. And to this day, whaling is still banned, and there's 3 countries that ignore it. It was the 1986 IWC ban on commercial whaling. That's the International Whaling Commission.
Okay.
So this was all going on right when the movie came out, and Japan, Norway, and Iceland are the only 3 countries that still do whaling.
Okay.
Well,
so this was a huge thing back then, trying to save the whales. And then the status of humpback whales today is basically they're not really that endangered anymore. Their population is on the rise. It's not critical.
Well, that's good.
Well, obviously someone came back from the 23rd century and fixed the timeline so that we don't have to worry about our humpback whales.
We were just talking about the glasses.
Further? Like, wait, how does that help us?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm sorry. About the glasses?
We were just talking about the glasses, and will Kirk get the glasses again? So here's the thought. What if at some point in the future, I know this is all paradoxical stuff, but what if at some point in the future whales become sentient enough to where they become a spacefaring race and they settle on some weird water planet somewhere super far away, and they sent that probe in order for Kirk to go get the whales to bring them back from extinction?
Say they can evolve. They kind of did something like that with Enterprise. There was a aquatic race that had spaceships and stuff, right?
Yeah, the Xindi.
The Xindi aquatics.
Oh, and also there was actually a species on Voyager that they came across, but it was
the think tank episode. There was aquatic.
Wait, what?
There was an episode of Voyager called Think Tank, and it had all these super smart, like just one member of different species living all on this one ship. It was the one with Jason Alexander from Seinfeld.
I remember that. But
and one of them was a giant aquatic creature.
The episode I was gonna say from Voyager, where they had a similar situation, was they came across a evolved species that was
the dinosaurs.
They were originally dinosaurs from Earth, and they became evolved and learned how to become space traveling evolved dinosaurs. And so that was
the probe could have been sent by future whales, trying to get Kirk to reintroduce whales onto Earth so that they can evolve and exist still, which is paradoxical and doesn't make any sense. Right. But a lot of stuff in this movie doesn't make any sense.
Just that's like the rest of the things in this movie.
Let me ask you guys a question. Do you like Italian?
That was hilarious. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yes,
It's funny, like they weren't switching their answers. They were like Spock was sticking to no.
Well, yeah, but then finally Kirk goes, yes, and he does too. And then Spock goes, yes. That was good.
That was such a great scene.
That was
great. The whale biologist, I guess, that they meet up with.
Gillian Taylor.
Yeah. She has a connection to Star Trek 1.
Yes, kind of, sort of.
Explain it to me, Josh.
Is it Stephen Collins that played Decker?
I think
in
name, yeah.
in the first one, they both went on to play husband and wife in Seventh Heaven TV show.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep. I remember that.
It's weird to think that her part would have been Eddie Murphy. Like, not only did they not go with Eddie Murphy, they changed the character completely.
Yeah. One thing I will give to Leonard Nimoy is he gave the co-starring characters things to do more than they had previously in both
Like
Star Trek 3 and 4.
Split up the team and set them on each different.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying even in Star Trek 3, I felt like he gave the other characters a little more to do, and he did the same with this. And I really do like the teams that were broken into. I thought, in fact, Scotty and McCoy were pretty good together. I liked their stuff together. But I also thought
the group was Sulu.
Yeah, I think he was solo at one point because it was Chekhov and Uhura. Sulu went solo, yep. But I thought he did pretty good with that.
Yes.
Now, I don't think it's completely unreasonable, but I did find it kind of funny that, like, because he can fly a spaceship, he can also fly a helicopter.
Well, and he did kind of say, they kind of established him as the, obviously a pilot, but he's talking to that guy, which doesn't make sense how he got on that. I'm assuming it's an airbase. He just randomly walked on an airbase with no kind of credentials to show who he was. And he just starts talking to a guy that's, doing some maintenance on the helicopter and asking him questions, which explains how he might have kind of learned some things. Maybe he's a quick study or whatever, fine. Right. And he has some experience, but I don't follow how he could just got on the airbase, and just, no one seems to think anything of it.
Fly around here much? Oh my.
Yeah. I thought it was funny they used that of metric. And I know that makes feet. Star Trek always used metric.
Okay.
Scotty talks about inches and feet and I think gallons and things like that. He uses the standard system as opposed to the metric system.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was familiar with both. It's just the one is
right, but I'm saying even within Star Trek we always hear them use the metric system.
Mm-hmm. So they have no worries or concern at all for the temporal prime directive?
Not at all.
McCoy is the only one that brings it up, and his argument lasts about as long as, I don't even know what. Like, he's like, okay, yeah, this could be the guy that invented it. Let's go.
That, and then he gives that woman a thing of future pills. They don't, they could have put something over, when they locked those doctors in the door, they could have put something over the window so they maybe didn't see anything, at least. They didn't do that. Yeah, Scotty gives the guy the formula to transparent aluminum.
Right.
There's probably, a few others, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was funny when... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, the scene where Scotty gives the guy from the past the formula to transparent aluminum, it just seems like, okay, so Scotty giving anyone from the 80s future tech for something like that seems like a huge violation of protocol with rules,
right,
temporal prime directive, not to mention dangerous to the timeline. You'd think they could just beam some of whatever they need from that place onto the bird of prey.
I don't know, but I thought it was funny. He just pushes random buttons and like all these windows and just junk starts popping up, and it was just so ridiculous. But
exactly,
yeah, Scott was pretty familiar with that Mac interface, isn't he?
Yeah, he just like goes to town, and there's all this stuff just flying at him.
He can't even type right. He's one finger in it.
That was I actually liked that more. I think that made it kind of more charming, more funny.
It is more hilarious that way.
And I love when the woman walks in. Not now, Madeline.
Thinking about this episode in the Temporal Prime Directive, it is kind of funny in that Voyager episode when they go back to 1996.
Yeah.
Where part of the whole reason that they get into that problem, there's many references in that. I think it's a 2-part episode, isn't it?
Well, it was a 2-part episode that was started by events that happened from previously from it.
Okay, so yeah, it's a 2-part episode, and a lot of the jokes and there's some references to this movie in particular, right? They reuse some of the jokes.
What?
They reuse some of the jokes like they did with the mouse. They did the exact same joke.
I don't remember that.
It's been a while since I watched Voyager. I remember the episode barely.
Like Tuvok picks up the mouse and starts talking into it.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
How did I miss that? I'm a huge Voyager fan. It's my favorite series.
So one of the things
I don't remember
that kind of funny is we're talking about them having no regard for the temporal time directive. The villain in those 2 episodes, or one of the villains, is like basically the time cop telling Janeway that he's had so many problems with like temporal violations due to Janeway's interference that he decides just to wipe Voyager off the map, erase them from history.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe some people were sitting around talking about this movie and talking about that, and that's when they came up with the idea for the time cop that goes crazy because he has to constantly fix everything that the crew is doing. Thinking about Kirk and his crew in particular.
Right. Huh.
It's an idea. I don't know if that's what happened, but it could be.
Yeah. Very interesting to think about that.
So to get back to Sulu, he gets on an airbase, no credentials. He learns how to fly it. He steals a helicopter and gets all this stuff, and nobody notices. Nobody seems to have an issue with that. It never, like, did he just take it and drop it back off and then walk back to their ship? Like, how did...
In the middle of daylight, no less.
Yeah. It just... Nothing about
there's
that.
No issues with him hanging over the park with all this material, lowering it into an invisible spaceship.
Yeah.
You'd think.
I thought about that too. You'd think there'd be like somebody coming by to check it out, police or the military.
Right.
Also, Uhura and Chekhov were pretty good at getting onto that Wessel.
So they beamed in, right?
They beamed into
I don't know.
Yeah, they beamed.
Like, okay. Even when they were just checking it out, they were like walking up the beach and they got really close to it, surprisingly close. There would have been all sorts of military barriers up there.
I remember them being on the shore, looking at it, and that's when he says, "An Admiral, it's the Enterprise." Like almost like.
There's no way they would have been able to get that close to it.
Oh no, that's actually not true. I've been there. That's a public place where along that shoreline where you can go and view that area from a distance.
And there was an in-service nuclear Wessel there?
Well, no. But the area they said when I was there that they have nuclear vessels there occasionally. They have all sorts of.
And they still let people around them?
What's that?
And they would let people just walk right up to them?
At that shoreline, at that point, it's a beach. It's a public beach there.
Yeah, I thought they were still a good distance away from it. You were seeing them on the beach.
He was close enough to read what it was.
I mean, okay, well, let me put it this way. At work, I guess some years ago, Air Force One was parked close to our building, and there's a lady that worked there at the time, and she has a picture of herself standing on our ramp where you can see Air Force One behind it, and I've seen this picture.
Yeah, I mean, that part of it was pretty plausible. Just being able to see it from a
I was just
distance.
thinking about, like, you can't get that close to Fermi, like there's armed guards there, or like even like if people drive out to see Area 51, you can't get anywhere close to it.
Right.
Okay, here's a question. Has it been established previously that radiation drains phaser power?
In this movie, it was established.
Well, yeah, I know that, but I'm saying, was it previously established? That you know of.
Radiation drains phaser power?
Yep. Chekhov goes to shoot the guy, to stun the guy.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't work, and then he goes, "Oh, it must be the radiation." And then
phaser?
It was a phaser, and then he threw it at him, and that was, by the way, more stuff he left behind for them to have.
I think it was a Klingon phaser, wasn't it?
True, but a phaser nonetheless. A gun is still a gun, whether it's made here or in Germany.
Right, well, yeah. Okay.
I almost got the impression he was bluffing, though. I thought like maybe it was like some kind of like scanning device.
As far as I know, prior to this movie,
they've said issue a phaser. Every team issue a phaser.
Oh, okay.
What? Well, as far as I know, there was never an episode or any part of a movie that said a phaser was.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering.
I don't think that had ever been established.
Okay, no worries. Just wondering.
How long has it been?
It's not ringing a bell.
How long ago was it when you last saw this before you watched it for the podcast? Both of you, Dave.
It had been a long time for me because, like I said, this is my second least favorite Star Trek movie. I hadn't seen it in years, but I just watched it for this podcast episode.
Gosh.
Outside of rewatching it today, the last time I watched it was the last time we thought we were going to record for this, however many months ago that was.
Well, how about before that?
I don't know. Because
I think it's probably been maybe like 15
I don't watch
years
this
for
one
me.
very often. How many? 15?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And somewhere around there. And the one part that I always remembered was Spock diving down and mind melding with the whale.
Mm-hmm.
So that part always stuck out to me. And I always thought that, one, it was really funny that he was diving down there. Like she turns around, flipping out because there's a guy diving in with the tank. Like maybe they're singing to that guy there. Isn't that what the lady says?
Yeah, maybe they're talking to that man there.
Yeah,
Which
that was
I
really
guess
funny.
no, that was a good scene. I like how like Spock didn't get that this was going to draw attention or make it maybe a little more difficult. And I don't really know why he was doing it. If maybe he was thinking like, "Hey, I'm from the future. There's this probe. Do you guys know anything about this? You know, like, are you going to be able to help us if we take it to the future?"
Him, like recovering from basically coming back to life. Like he's kind of wasn't all there. You know what I mean?
It could be.
Then the other thing that I was curious about is, so he mind melds with a animal. I don't know if that had ever been done before. And then
Kinda.
this animal has enough sentience to where it can tell Spock, like, give him all this information, including, oh, they're unhappy about what humans have done to their species. Like, they would know that.
Yeah, they do in. Oh man, I used to know the name of the episode too with the rock creature. There's like this rock monstery thing, and
Rock lobster.
rock monster. Yes, that Spock mind melds with in that episode.
And yeah, they're down in that mine.
Yeah, and it because it's you find out that they're finding these like orbs that they are precious metal or something, and you find out it's the creature's eggs. So all these miners are essentially killing its offspring. So Spock actually mind melds with the creature.
Part of the reason Spock may have been acting weird is he did a little too much LDS.
That very well could be.
I love the whole LDS thing. That cracks me up.
Did you think it was odd that Kirk didn't know what a pizza was?
No. With the way the world's going nowadays, I imagine that by the time Kirk is alive, all junk food has been eradicated.
Okay, because in other Star Treks, they do establish, okay, Sisko likes baseball. Tom Paris likes old rock music and 50s TV shows and old trucks. Why wouldn't pizza still be around?
Yeah, I guess you're right. And Troy was in love with ice cream sundaes, right?
Yeah, she liked chocolate.
I think they had pizza on Enterprise, and it was something like Trip tried to give it to a Vulcan or something like that.
Oh,
it
really?
was a funny thing. I always wondered why it was taking them so long at high warp speeds to make an approach at only one star, being the sun. Normally, at warp speed, you see, stars flying by, countless of them flying by, but it's taking them so long to get to, like, the one star,
How fast were they going? What warp?
Well, like at the scene where Sulu's calling out the speeds. Warp 6!
Right, yeah, how fast?
Warp 7. It seems like it's taking, like, a long time just to get to one star.
Here's what I want to know. Why was it such a big deal in Star Trek The Motion Picture not to enter warp within the solar system?
Yeah, and what's funny about that is I think they made that a point in, like, something else in Star Trek.
It's like, what? Is the fumes of the warp engines gonna, do something? Like, what's the point?
I don't know if it was another movie or another episode of one of the spin-off series, but they had said that again. As someone said it again, like one or two other times, about being concerned about going to warp within a planetary system. I don't remember what it was, though. Or what? And then there was never, again, something else that was not given an explanation.
Okay. When I watched this, I kind of got, and this is a little bit of a stretch, but just roll with it here, a little bit of a Jurassic Park vibe, just in the sense that they're bringing back an extinct animal to the modern day, because in the 23rd century, whales are essentially like dinosaurs. They've been or at least the humpback whales.
That's funny.
You're taking an animal that's been extinct for however many years and bringing it back to the modern day. It just somewhat reminded me of that, just a small degree.
I was thinking about that a little too. Like, how would that have an effect on the
ecosystem? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, they have no idea what century and they will defend themselves violently if necessary.
Yeah.
And according to Demolition Man, the anchovy has gone extinct. So I'm not sure what to eat.
Yeah.
I always thought it was odd that they didn't put any different clothes on to appear like they belonged in that era once they left the bird of prey and dispersed into the city. Vulcan bathrobe.
They only had so much money and they couldn't go splurge it on, clothes. However, it's funny you bring up uniforms because obviously this movie and Insurrection did it a lot where you see a lot of the crew for a lot of the time out of their normal uniforms.
Right.
And I know why. It makes sense, why they would, they take off their insignia or anything that references rank. Some of them are wearing certain clothes that, like, I think Sulu's wearing like just a regular leather jacket. Chekhov's wearing some leather pants and jacket, so it's kind of weird looking. But anyway,
I guess it's supposed to be 23rd century civilian clothes.
Right. Right, well, that makes sense because that's what they used when they broke McCoy out of the mental institution in Star Trek 3
and then
and
stole
went right to the Genesis. Yeah. Okay, so I get it. That's fine. And that makes total sense. I never liked it as much seeing the crew out of uniform of any ship.
I'm right there with you.
They look so weird to me. Like I'm used to seeing them in uniform.
Yeah.
That it's just so odd to me.
And you'd think that maybe the Klingon ship has a replicator. They could replicate clothes that made them blend in better.
I didn't think it was as odd as when we see them mountain climbing in one of the other movies.
What? You mean Star Trek 5 when Kirk is rock climbing?
Yeah, and they're wearing like blue jean jackets and stuff.
Yeah, but they're also camping. Again, everything it makes sense. I get it.
That to me looks stranger than seeing them in their some like supposed futuristic gear. To just see them wearing like 1970s denim or 1980s denim.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
denim's been around forever, man.
I'm assuming it's been a while since you've seen Star Trek 5, Brandon, because it actually they're not.
I went through all these movies like 15 years ago, and I haven't watched them since.
Okay, yeah. The Star Trek 5 stuff. I mean, Dr. McCoy in that camping scene, he's wearing like a jean jacket or something like that.
Yeah.
But like Spock and Kirk, they're wearing futuristic. I mean,
all right, let's save it for Star Trek 5.
Okay.
I know it's easy to get off topic, but
it is. It's very easy.
So obviously, Star Wars always has had really unique, cool-looking aliens, and Star Trek not as much. There were a few aliens we see, I think, at the very beginning and especially at the very end. One of them is like this kind of hairy, almost Wolfman-looking thing. But
yeah, I wanted to ask about that one. Like, he almost looks like a Klingon, except kind of more like you're saying, more canine features to it.
I didn't get a Klingon vibe, but he was definitely like furry beast
with
thing.
Like white hair and orange skin almost.
Oh no, I know what you're talking about.
You're talking about the president, right?
Yeah, no. I know what he's talking about, but no, he was the president in Star Trek 6, Dave.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about the actual like kind of Wolfmanish looking thing, and I think he was talking to either an Andorian, which was also cool to see a classic Star Trek original series alien brought back. But I just always wish when they have like scenes like that where they're just at a council meeting or something, I kind of wish they would have more unique looking things in the background.
Yeah.
I was just, it doesn't have to be like a main thing. Just like, I just wish they would make up something that just doesn't look like a human with a weird forehead or a weird nose or a weird chin, weird ears, but anyway.
Yeah, I've always been of this. You see, there's two schools of thought when it comes to that. There's one school of thought that says all the aliens in the galaxy are going to be vastly different. But then there's the other school of thought that says the majority of all the aliens are probably just going to look really similar because they have, all similar types of planets that they're living on, all very similar to Earth. Whether it's really more like an Earth desert planet like Vulcan or an Earth ice planet like Andor, you're going to have similarities. I've always been of the latter school.
Yeah, but look at how many different unique creatures live on our planet, and that's just one planet. Like, so you think you go to all these, if these other planets existed, there'd be something that doesn't look like a person.
He's 8472.
Anyway, it's not a big deal, but it's just something I wish they would try to do a little more in some of these movies.
I thought it was odd is Uhura and Chekhov can't find Alameda in San Francisco. Hello. I thought they went to Starfleet Academy in San Francisco. You'd think they could, find it and be more familiar with that.
Too much time partying.
I guess.
Maybe it doesn't exist then. Cities don't just stay the same forever.
I guess. Hadn't thought about that.
Like, why couldn't Marty find the dock right away?
Because he didn't live
He's a person that moves around.
He didn't have the same house in the 80s.
The town had different, like, the names of streets were different.
Yeah, but Doc lived in the mansion that he burnt down.
Yeah.
I actually think.
Well, my point is, like, things change. Even in the same spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those whalers must be, like, the best in the world because, like, those whales barely got out to the sea and they were already on them.
Well, here's the thing. Didn't they say they were taking the whales to Alaska from San Francisco?
That's what they said. Yeah.
How long would that take? Because they had only left the night before.
Yeah, he said that they did it the night before
they would have
to
had
avoid
to
a media frenzy.
Boat.
Yeah, I don't know. Another thing is
dropped them off right in like Whalers Bay.
Yeah. Another thing, when the whalers shoot their harpoon and it hits the side of the ship, which is, kind of a cool little scene or whatever, but the ship was way higher than the boat. It doesn't seem to make sense. If they would probably be pointing it down at the water to hit the whale. How did it hit the side of the ship to fall, just bounce back?
I imagine the thing is pretty heavy. It probably has a big arc on it.
I was gonna say the whaling, the harpoon that was probably shot upward at an arc at an angle.
That's
what I always thought.
When they showed the bird of prey decloak, he's much higher than the boat in the water.
I mean, like to get distance. Maybe they were trying to get like. I always thought it was a distance thing, and they were just trying to. That's what I always thought.
Very well.
Yeah, I think the line "Whoever said the human race was logical" is the best line of the whole movie. Actually think about that line.
I think that was Gillian Taylor that said that.
Yeah, I know.
To hunt a species to extinction is not logical. Who's to say the human race is logical?
Yeah. Whoever said the human race was logical is a line I actually think about every now and then on a regular basis. And for whatever reason, it pops up in my head every now and then, and I think that it's a really cool line.
Did anyone pick up on a possible slight reference to a Scotty Uhura relationship?
No.
Well,
no.
That I didn't pick up on that, but I mean, obviously
there's a point where there's like a little thing where she's kind of like hugging up on him.
Well, that
would
make sense. That would make sense because then they have a relationship in the next movie.
One of the other things I thought didn't make any sense, and this is just a smaller thing, and it's half-heartedly a joke, but also too, I was thinking about it in the movie. I don't believe that Jillian would have drove that truck.
What?
It's like a hillbilly pickup truck that was all beat up. It just seemed like out of character for her to be driving that.
I don't know, but speaking of her in her truck, there's the part where she first goes to the aquarium or whatever, and she discovers that they've been taken, and they show her like she's mad. She slaps the boss. She goes out and she like gets in the truck and she's like mad, and then she instantly thinks, okay, I guess my best option is to try this crazy guy. I wish they would have lingered on her a little bit longer. Like she's sitting in the driver's seat. She looks really upset. She like instantly, it was almost like they were just rushing it. I wish they would have lingered on her just a hair longer, that how upset she is before she thinks, okay, maybe I'm desperate. I'm going to have to try this crazy guy supposedly from the future.
Did they explain why it was important that they go to the exact moment in the future?
When they get back to the future?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, they definitely didn't seem like they had no overlap with seeing themselves leave again, like in Back to the Future.
Yeah, I always just took that to because they didn't want
to planned it perfectly.
They didn't want to, arrive too far. I mean, they didn't want to mess up the timeline any more than they already are. So they'll just come back exactly when they leave, so that there's, no hiccups.
I thought it was funny when she's in the spaceship and they're flying where the whales are located. She's like, we're in range for the whales, or what Kirk says on screen. She goes, "You could do that?" And I'm thinking, okay, you're on a spaceship that you found out time traveled, and you beamed in. She didn't even walk up the ramp. She grabbed onto Kirk to get beamed in, but she's amazed that they can put an image on the screen. I just thought that was like silly.
She was amazed by their HD TV.
I guess so. Another thing that was kind of weird is, speaking of that, is, they do all this running around in the hospital. They get beamed out of there, but next to the ship, not in the ship. Everybody else walks up the ramp, I think, and then Kirk gets beamed into the ship instead of walking the ramp, just so they could have a reason for her to jump onto him to get beamed along with him. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make sense. Everybody else walked in the ship. Why would why wouldn't Scotty?
A lot where they would beam people on, and other times they would just walk on, and I didn't get any rhyme.
Yeah, but usually in Star Trek they beam on down to the surface of the planet. They beam back into the transporter room.
But they landed on the planet, and I don't even know why they landed on the planet exactly instead of just hanging out in orbit. They had the cloaking
they were
device.
running low on power. They had to recharge the battery. Maybe they couldn't sustain themselves in space, in orbit.
I guess
that's the only thing I can think of.
Okay, power. They needed power. That's why they were soaking up radiation from the nuclear Wessel, right?
Right.
So
they were
those
converting
two guys
it.
Looking at? The two guys were like, "Oh, we're getting a power drop," but they're looking at radar screen.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
If
it was detecting the device that they were using, maybe, I don't know.
And then
I never noticed that.
Uhura scooted out of there, leaving Chekhov to get captured yet again. And they catch him, and he starts just taking off. He's running through a military vessel, and everybody's just walking around like doing their daily stuff while he's like running for his life, and these guys are chasing him. But like everybody else is walking around like nothing's happening.
But you notice the part where they yell something and everybody hits the floor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a real procedure that they do. One, it helps them see the guy they're chasing, and so they don't lose him, and in case they have to shoot
but then,
them.
Like, you see Chekhov like just booking it down this hallway, and then in front of, like, behind him is a guy just like walking at a normal pace.
I don't know.
I think I remember that. I thought that was odd.
Yeah.
I just want to say on a personal note, I thought about this movie a lot when I was actually visiting San Francisco. The first time I visited San Francisco, I kept seeing all the different things in the city, and I was thinking about this movie, especially when I was looking.
How did you visit San Francisco? That's a fictional city they made up for the movie.
What
are you talking about?
Yeah, did you go to the future?
Did you go to Hill Valley too while you're out there? I'm sorry, go ahead.
You made me lose my train of thought.
I'm just joking with you, Dave.
I know. What was I saying? Oh, okay, so when I was...
You saw all the places.
Yes, and especially when I was overlooking San Francisco Bay, and I saw that when I was there looking over San Francisco Bay, I remember I looked up and I saw a helicopter flying overhead, and I just imagined it was Sulu and they're piloting it. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
So when the whale gets to the future ocean and he's talking to the probe, you notice he does this thing where he kind of points himself downward. His nose is pointing like down. I remember
the whale goes vertical.
Yeah, exactly. And for some reason, when I was a kid and saw this, I always thought that the whale was injured, like he was dying or something. And
I never noticed this.
I never caught it that was just something they did, because then the probe does the same thing. It turns itself like that as well. But when I was a kid, I never got that.
Whales actually communicate. Like, something about that kind of seems familiar.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to be a whale biologist to get that reference. Yeah. I don't know.
It's a whale of a tail.
Yeah.
So they get back to their own time, and they get a slap on the wrist and whatever, and then everyone's celebrating them for saving the day. Did you notice there was smiling Vulcans?
I did. Yes.
I was like, what's going on there?
Well, just another example of this movie really dropping the ball when it comes to staying in continuity and making sense of all the different things going on, and
maybe they were Romulans.
No, we're enemies with the Romulans.
They were spies.
It's funny because you actually even see Spock doing that at the end of this movie. He's laughing.
Oh yeah, in the water. Yeah, all the Vulcans were having a good old time.
He was
Speaking of that,
anyway, though,
I do think this is the best version of Spock. I like that they finally kind of have him accepting that, okay, I'm a Vulcan, so I can be logical and whatever, but I'm also human. So he kind of almost seems like in this movie, the next movie, and the sixth movie, I feel like he's kind of finally he's the best of both worlds, no pun intended. He kind of shows some sense of humanity, but he's also logical, and I like that.
I get what you're saying. I think I prefer
like loyalty and friendship. He has the value of that. What's that?
I was going to say, I think I prefer Star Trek V Spock, because it's a little less of the dumb, I have no idea what swearing is, sort of like weird things. He gets it. He gets that he's, kind of on the path to being back to normal in Star Trek V, but he also gets it when, certain things like he wouldn't see,
I mean, that's just played for laughs, because they had all the characters doing that, where nobody knew what stuff was.
Like Spock says in this movie at some point, he says, "How will playing cards help?" And I'm like,
that was a very Data line. Yeah. That would be something Data would say in The Next Generation.
Yeah.
But I will say, I mean, they had them all doing that, so I can kind of let it go. And since this movie, there's so much stuff like, the Prime Directive and, no pun intended again, logical stuff being thrown out the window just to have a good, fun adventure, I can kind of let all that go.
Yeah.
But one thing I will point out is, do you know the age difference between Kirk and Gillian Taylor? Okay. The real age between Catherine Hicks and William Shatner is 20 years.
There's a 20-year difference. Jeez.
20-year difference. I was like, dang. No wonder when he gets back to the present. Well, I don't even know your number. Oh, I'll call you. And he almost looked like stunned, like, this isn't the usually the way this goes.
Yeah. That's funny.
I enjoyed their relationship and like their scenes together and their dialogue, and how he was kind of laying on the charm to win over her favor in order to get her to help them. But that was really funny at the end. It's like, well, the ladies' man just got kind of denied. She's more interested in going and checking.
He was being a little flirty with her, but nothing more came of it. And that was kind of nice to see that a little different than, how it usually goes for him.
Yeah, at this point, Kirk's probably thinking, dang, I'm losing my touch.
Well, that's pretty much the movie. Do we want to get to final thoughts?
Well, before we do that, I had a few other things I wanted to say.
Sure.
I think the exchanges with Dr. McCoy and the staff in the hospital are really funny. Like, what is this, the Dark Ages, stuff like that. Those were, like, priceless. Those were, like, some of the highlights of this movie were some of those kinds of lines. And,
they gave him that hospital scene. Like, that was his scene for sure.
When he's, like, arguing with those other hospital staff in the elevator about... like you say, it sounds like a Spanish Inquisition because of all the stuff that they're saying that doesn't make sense. And
it's funny how he's like such a grump, but at the same time, like, it's because he actually cares about people.
Yeah. Like, and and to him, all these people who are doing things the way they do it at this hospital, to him that comes off as obviously these hospital people of this timeline don't care about people because they're doing things in such a barbaric way from his point of view, Also, I want to say it was really cool seeing Andorians in this movie. I know you mentioned them earlier, but I don't think there had been any other Andorians in any other Star Trek movie up to this point in the first 3 movies.
Don't you see an Andorian when Kirk's given the big spiel about Voyager? Like, everyone's gathered in that, like, big room. I thought maybe there might have been one.
Maybe one.
Maybe.
I don't remember. But they're definitely more up front in this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if it's just in a little way.
Sure.
Also, really cool thing that is related to this movie. For anyone out there who has an Alexa computer thingy, if you say Alexa, if you say something like, Alexa, what would Scotty say? She will actually respond with, Admiral, there be whales here. And some other things that Scotty says, like, I can't give her any more power. I've given it all she's got, Captain. But one of the things that she says is, Admiral, there be whales here. So that's it's one of the many Star Trek Easter eggs that are built into that device. And one more thing I want to say is I think it was really cool seeing Sulu when they are approaching in space dock, and he looks at Excelsior, and he's like, man, I really want that ship. It was kind of like foreshadow because they actually make him the captain of that ship. It's like you can see Sulu kind of crushing on the Excelsior briefly. Right. Yeah. And it's interesting how they, as they were getting ready to reveal the Enterprise hiding behind the Excelsior, it's interesting how they made the audience think that the Excelsior was going to be the ship that they get, because they're approaching it and they're showing it get closer and closer, and then it just moves out of the way, and then there's the 1701A just waiting.
Right. I heard that supposedly that originally they were saying that ship was a different ship and they renamed it Enterprise for them.
Oh,
but
yeah,
when I
read
watched
that
the movie,
too.
I didn't get that impression. They didn't say anything to allude to that.
No, it wasn't anything in there in the movie you would have, but that was definitely something that the writers.
Okay, so it was written, but they never really filmed it or anything that references that.
They didn't really make it apparent in the movie, but that is something that I think they intended it to be.
Gotcha. Okay.
But they just never made it any kind of way that you would know that.
Okay. Are those your final thoughts, Dave, or were those just your last points you wanted to make before final thoughts?
I think that is just about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brandon?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things to think about with this movie as far as like, well, why this? Why are they doing it this way? How does that work? lots of weird things like that. And then the whole feel of the movie is just super cheesy. Like, it's a movie about saving the whales. At the time, it may have been a little more relevant, but it still seems like really cheesy. And Star Trek isn't above like beating us over the head with messages. But in the long run, even though the story is weird, it's very entertaining, and there's some funny moments. And it's nice to have an installment that's like that, where it's not as serious. It can just like you can turn your brain off a little more and just laugh at it. I do think it's a little overrated though. Like, it did really well at the time. It got really big critic scores, really big audience scores. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a C plus.
Okay. For me, this was always my least favorite of the Star Treks. This was a movie I never liked nearly as much as the rest of them. I typically skipped it. I never found the stuff quite as funny. And in fact, when I was watching it the last time, I almost felt like this seemed like it could be a Voyager episode. Like, I don't know, something about it. But I actually did enjoy it a little more this time around. I was kind of surprised by that, and I found some things funnier than I used to. It's still not a favorite for me, but I do think, to give some credit, I think, he did a cool thing by, again, giving the secondary characters more to do. I specifically liked the team of Scotty and Bones. I thought they did really well together. I respect that he did it differently and that it was lighthearted, trying something new. Although, even though I can think that was cool to try some new territory, it just didn't quite. That there's no longevity for me in that. But one big thing, like with this movie, and there's another movie, Star Trek movie, going to be coming down the line that I kind of have this issue with before, is okay, you have time travel at your disposal. So I know the real reason they didn't do this was because there would be no plot to this movie. But if we're just, put our hats on, like this is a real world situation, Kirk could have had them go back in time and save his son David, save the Enterprise from being destroyed, save the Enterprise crew, save the Amagosa Observatory people from getting slaughtered, stop Khan from doing everything he did. He could have, rectified problems from the last three movies.
I'm sorry. Did you say Amagosa? Because that's the observatory in Generations.
Whatevs. Okay.
It's just, I'm sorry.
Regular one. The regular one observatory that got slaughtered. There were people there that got.
Okay.
Once you do the time travel thing, it's kind of like I was watching a video the other day of like who would win in a fight, Juggernaut or Superman. The winner is Superman because he can throw Juggernaut into space. Well, he can win every fight like that. So what's the point anyway?
Right.
Same thing with time travel. If we can time travel
guess. But okay, here's the thing though. I get that. Again, if they actually had them do it, then really it would be too easy. But at the very least, I wish they would have had Kirk talk about it, like he was struggling with it, or maybe he suggests that and Spock kind of has to give him some spiel about why not, why it's not a good idea to do that, because at the very least his son David, I mean, I know, you could have saved all those other people I talked about, but at the very least you think he would want to save his son David. And I just would have liked to seen a scene where maybe he talked about doing that.
No more child support.
Anyway, So this surprisingly though, I did like it a lot more than I have in times past, but still doesn't make it a top movie for me. And like you, Brandon, I do think it's kind of overrated. You'll hear a lot of people say Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is the best, but I hear a lot of people say this one, or that this one's right behind Star Trek II.
I've never heard that, man.
Really? Oh yeah. Yeah, a lot of people either put this one number one or they'll put this one number two, and I do disagree with that.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that's where I kind of stand. So I was kind of debating what I wanted to give this as a grade, and in the end, I think I decided on a C minus. I actually thought about a D at one point, but because I did enjoy it more this time than I ever have previously, I decided to bump it up to a C minus. Better than it has been before, but still not as great as I think other people say it is.
All right. I guess it's my turn to grade it. I also say C minus.
Okay.
And that is because I feel like this movie breaks down into three chapters. Chapter 1 being the events leading up to the time travel, and then the events within the 1980s, and then the later part when they go back to the future. And this movie is full of, in my opinion, this movie is full of cringeworthy moments that are just, they don't make sense, and they're just there, and they bother me, and I don't like them, but they're balanced by really awesome stuff in the first chapter and in the third chapter of this movie. And like, I really like the whole court-martial scene where everyone's lined up in their Starfleet uniforms with all the other classic Star Trek species in the same room, and you see Spock's father, and like they're, you know, together, and there's a lot of classic Trek elements in the first and in the third acts of this movie. It's just that just really they just there's so much about this movie I can't stand, and so it really drags it down in my rating of this movie. But overall, I have to, in the end, I'll just go with a C-.
Yeah, so. I like how Spock joins them.
Yeah,
when they're exactly. being court-martialed, that he didn't have to. He wasn't accused of anything, but I like that he felt like that camaraderie and loyalty to them, that he stood with them on that.
Yes, it's very satisfying to see that. It's in his character. It's not surprising because for anyone who knows Spock and knows what his, you know, character traits are, that's something that you would totally expect him to do. So, C-.
All right.
Okay, that about wraps it up. I'm not sure exactly what our next episode is going to be, but might be Christmas themed.
Yeah.
This, in a way, is kind of, like I said earlier, an offbeat Christmas story or a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
See you in another 8 months, Dave.
Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Dave, thanks for coming back with us. Nice
no problem. Yes, it's always an adventure to be here on the Escape Pod with you guys.
Yeah, and you can find us all over the place, so like, subscribe, share, rate, all that good stuff. We appreciate it.
Yepers.
Live long and Ponfar.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to travel through time. I bid you adieu.
Don't stop now! You can't go! All the plants are gonna die!
Where are you going? I've got to return some videotapes.
Bye, Felicia.
Okay. Part of the reason he may have been acting... Your microphone is in your mouth, Dave, or up your nose?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right, it was. Sorry.
I'm going to go find, this guy and talk to him.
Hold on. Dave, you're breathing in your microphone.
Sorry.